No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're discussing number 5 of our 5 P's of leadership. And this is the final one of the series. For people who are just joining us, about 5 weeks ago, we started with this series based on feedback from our listeners that they wanted to hear us boil down some of the most important elements of leadership. So if they really wanted to focus on getting better at specific things, these would be the things that we think they should focus on getting better. And 5 weeks ago, we started with the first P, which was personal policies. And those are things like ethics and values and just the non-negotiables of what you will and will not stand for when working as a leader in a job. Next, we moved on to platform, which is basically the set of tools you have in implementing your leadership strategy. And then the third one we did was perseverance, the idea that in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to overcome hurdles and roadblocks because things will not always go swimmingly. And then last week we talked about perspective, the importance of using perspective and storytelling to be able to give other people what they need to build belief and to help them, kind of get where they need to go without just schooling them and telling them what you know better. And so for our final P, we're going to talk about something that we don't often talk about on Hacking Your Leadership, and that's performance.
Yes.
Performance matters. And we don't talk about it often because I think for the longest time, performance was something that was the end-all, be-all, the only thing that mattered when it came to leadership for a lot of our history. For a lot of the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, it was all about performance. And if you had engaged employees, that was like the icing on the cake, but the cake was the performance. And I think we're kind of moving into this new era where you can't say that performance is all that matters. You have to consider the experience of the employee. You have to consider the work environment. There's a lot of things to consider. But I will tell you that the only way to make sure that you have credibility in saying, my way of leading people is to make them feel valued. My way of leading people is to make sure I'm grounded in this set of values, that my tools are good tools for leading people, that I have relevant experience and perspective, that I can persevere through roadblocks. Being able to say all those things, it doesn't matter unless you have the performance to back it up. Because doing all those things and having it lead to low performance means that no one's going to listen to you when you say, I have all these really cool things. And so I think it's important to actually talk about it really for maybe one of the first times we've mentioned it on the show. But I want to ask you, first of all, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had all those things, but the performance just wasn't there? And how did you get through it?
Yeah, there was definitely times when I thought I had all those things and performance wasn't there. And
That's
then
a
what I
great
realized
answer.
quickly, right, was I didn't actually have all those things.
Right. Yeah, if performance isn't there, you probably don't have all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't add up that way,
Right.
And I think, similar to what you were saying in regards to performance, it absolutely is critical because you can't have a place to work or a team to have unless those things are being funded by profits from performance. So, I think that we're in a space and time and age now where the people aspect, the understanding that you've got to take care of people to get performance, I think is the new cultural norm, where before it was just you get performance, and if you got to get rid of people, you get rid of people, you get new people, and I think that with the element of social media and just where we are today as a society, if you run an organization or a business or a team where you just burn through people because you don't have any care for them, you should expect to be held accountable in public. Like, that's just how things go this day and age. And I think it's like, I believe that's for the better.
Of course it is.
Yeah, you want to take care of people. You want to treat people well. You want to empower people. You want people to have a good working environment. And at the same time, you want people to be really clear that performance absolutely matters. Outside of just the ability to sustain a job and a wage and being able to feed your family and achieve things you want to achieve from a financial standpoint, you have to have a job. So you got to do what you got to do to make sure that there's profit there to keep that job. But I think even more than that, I came from the school where it was results equal credibility equals opportunity. R equals C equals L. I'll never forget that. It was
Me
something
neither.
that, yeah, was very much ingrained, and I think in how you and I, came up in the ranks of leadership, and it was important because results matter, and that equals credibility. You said this earlier. Like, I don't like to listen to people that don't actually have a positive business. They don't act, they or their teams don't achieve the expectations that are being asked of them, because then what kind of credibility do you have if you're not able to show it and do it yourself? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that if you come from that place of results equal credibility equals opportunity, that's exactly what that lays out. Is that you do the job to the best of your ability. People then they respect you for it. You become credible for it. Now you then have the opportunity to take on more, and you have the opportunity to have an opinion in a room that truly matters because you have the proof in the pudding. You've actually done the work.
Right. So I know a lot of people who what they say is right. What they say about leadership, what they say about their personal policies, their platforms, being able to persevere, being able to give perspective, what they say about those things is right on. And we might align 99% on what the right way to treat your employees are and to lead them and to help get them opportunities. But if you don't have the numbers on paper to back it up, it really becomes difficult to you might believe that what they say is accurate, but if you don't have the ability to do it, then all you have the ability to do is say it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge difference between being able to know how to lead people and being able to lead people. And there are a lot of people out there who when they're alone and they're writing their leadership book on how to lead people, they can write a bestseller. And but if they don't have the perspective, and we talked about this, we profiled some leadership legends last year where we talked about some people's ability to really talk about leadership in a way that builds belief and gains followers. But if they don't have the actual experience of running the business where people have had to depend on them to get ahead or to be mentored and developed, it's really difficult to give that person responsibility or to trust that they can get a job done. You have to see it on paper first.
Yeah, and I think it applies across all aspects of life. Like, I think when you consider sports, some of the best coaches out there are like player coaches. They are people that have played the games at a very high level, and then they are able to drive performance because they have the credibility and the respect of the team. I think even like listening to people that don't have kids talk about kids, right? Like
That's a great example.
right? Like it's kind of like, okay,
they could be right. I still don't care.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. I don't care, right?
Right.
Like
you don't have the right. You don't have the right to say it. You don't have the life to be able to say that, even though I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. I still, it's funny because I think of, obviously we've talked about this many times before, but like being Gary Vee fans, and him talking about these business consultants that have never owned their own business. And it's like, yeah, in theory, everything you're saying may be true, but your credibility is nothing because you've never done it. Because it makes you want to say, okay, cool. So how did you do it when you owned a business?
Right.
Okay. So you want to talk about the kids. So how do you parent your kids? And they go, I don't have any. Right. So like it's the same thing when it comes to performance and leadership. It's if you have not been able to role model and show the ability to deliver upon objectives and lead, whether it's a team, an office, a market, a work, a business unit, whatever that is, if you've not led in performance in some aspect of your role, it's very difficult to have the credibility to influence change. Not that it can't be done, and trust me, like it can be done. You can have the best idea in the room and have a great perspective on things, and people will listen. And I'll listen. I'll listen to every great idea. I'm gonna listen to it with a side eye. And I'm like, I don't, I'm not sure. But if it's a great idea, I'm going to listen, because I think that's what I've learned in my tenure is great ideas come from everywhere.
Right.
And I don't put the filter on, it's very hard for me. I have to fight that filter. Where I just turn off. Like
Right.
I'm not interested in what that person has to say, because I have yet to see that person lead a team to any level of success, and so I have to pay closer attention and listen and make sure that I don't have that filter on, because I have learned in my career that I've made that mistake, is as I've not listened to those individuals, and then there was something that was great that came out of a dialogue, and I missed it. So, I'm going to listen regardless, but performance is critical if you're going to, consider yourself to be a successful leader.
Right. And I think another thing that to make sure we keep in mind here too is that performance doesn't just mean whatever arbitrary metrics or numbers that your company has decided are important, because I've been on enough teams in my life to know that I was on some teams that on paper looked like they were performing incredibly well. But because of whatever arbitrary numbers or metrics the company came up with, and because of the history of whatever location or business unit or market that I was in, it looked like I was part of a team that was performing well, when in actuality, there were a lot of holes in the performance and it just looked good on paper. And so it's not just about those arbitrary metrics. When we talk about performance, I want to see fluctuations of performance. I want to see experience on what did you do to turn something around? What did you do when performance wasn't there? I want to know that your values were something that you held to when the performance was low. That maybe you questioned something about the tools that you could use, or you used the tools accurately to turn something around. So this isn't just about this black and white, oh, were the numbers there? Was the profitability there? That's important, believe me, it absolutely is. But you can't just look at it at face value. It's not just, oh, was the business profitable? There are some really, really profound stories, especially up in Silicon Valley, where you had some amazing companies in terms of what they invented or what they came up with, what they engineered. It was just game changing, and they still went out of business because they didn't know how to lead people. They didn't know how to put together a good team and keep a team engaged. They were incredibly profitable for the few years that they existed. Then they didn't exist anymore because they didn't know how to lead. And so this isn't just about those performance metrics. It's about how the relationship between performance and leadership play off each other in a cycle. Because when the performance isn't there, how do you fall back on your leadership platform and your skills and your perseverance to turn that around? Don't just tell me that the numbers were good.
I think it's a great point, and I think even we did an entire show on how to lead a high performing team,
Right.
and so that means that there has to be performance in a high performing team. And to your point, like, it's not necessarily about measuring a single thing or a collective of business metrics that you're looking at. It really is a cultural element. Are you leading in a way where people are excited to to list goals and to achieve goals and to exceed goals? Are you building a culture where people understand that there's an expectation or there's a responsibility to deliver upon what's being asked of us, by the organization or by, specific leaders within an organization? Are you focused on making sure that people understand that when we all show up collectively together and we do our best and we bring our unique selves to the table, that there's no goal or no thing that we can't achieve together? Because those are the things that people take away when they work on high performing teams. And when you have a culture of performance, is people walk away with this idea and understanding that anything is achievable, and that if people are aligned and they're communicating and they're working through developing one another, and they're transparent and they're honest about, what they see and feedback, and it's effective feedback, and like all these things that you get out of a team that wants to perform are all things that they take with them that really define their character in the long run.
Yeah, I think in our goals of trying to over-index on the employee experience, I think a lot of leaders out there neglect performance, Because I'll tell you, there are some companies out there who they have this incredible culture of psychological safety. They have this incredible culture of making sure that people feel like they are able to bring their best selves to work. But what can happen in those environments is it can attract a degree of laziness. It can attract a degree of people who want to take advantage of that environment. And it takes an okay leader to be able to manage performance from a perspective of, if you don't perform, you get out. It takes a really strong leader to be able to lead in an environment where the employee experience is paramount, but you also have to deliver on that performance as well. Because if the performance starts to fluctuate, what do you do in order to get it back without throwing the employee experience out the window? Because people like being involved in winning teams. They like being on winning teams. And when you are involved in a team where you feel like you're giving your all, but you're not part of a winning team because the performance isn't there and because other people on the team are not performing like they should, that will bleed out into you. Eventually, there's only so long you can do that until you start to go, well, if no one else is trying, why should I try also?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's an element of, as a leader, the performance piece and why that matters. Because if you're not considering performance, by the individual and collectively by the team, and you're not continually checking in to make sure that there is, growth and positive incomes and that type of thing, positive outcomes, that type of thing going forward, you're really allowing a culture and environment of mediocrity. And when you have complacency and mediocrity in an environment, you don't get performance, not to the level that it can be. And like I said, that can be very damaging, not just from the profitability of the business, but more importantly, how it just completely goes against, the idea of positive culture and growth and development. If people aren't feeling like they're winning, if people aren't feeling like they're achieving something together, they're less likely to take risks in wanting to learn more and try new things. It becomes well, I guess if nobody cares about performance here, nobody's pushing the envelope, we just show up and do our job and go home, then you don't get those people that want to step out and say, well, wait a minute, I have a better idea, or why can't we do it this way? Or, hey, like, I have a passion and I know that this is our goal and I know that we can achieve it, but if we do this, then we question that, then we can make these adjustments. You don't get any of that innovation from a cultural standpoint when people are, not really engaged around performance.
I completely agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
Okay, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to consider the performance metrics that your organization utilizes to measure success. I want you to write those down. And then I want you to consider what we talked about in these 5 P's of leadership, but specifically 3 of them. The first one being your personal policies. How do these goals and these performance metrics align with your personal policies and ethics? The second thing is around your platform. How does your philosophy or sum of maxims apply to the performance metrics that your company measures? And the final thing is around your perspective and your ability to build belief with your team around performance. So we all know that performance matters in regards to driving business and creating profitability for your organization. But as a successful leader, you want to make sure that you're building a culture and environment around performance that allows your team to feel motivated, inspired, and challenged to show up every day to become the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack. I think it's important for leaders to just remember that no matter how good you are at getting your people to build belief in you, no matter how good you are at your values and no matter how strong you hold to them, if you can't back it up with the actual numbers that your company is looking for, and if you can't back it up with a profitable business, you really can't claim to be doing it the right way.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.